So God first got my attention back, it was 13 years ago, when he smote me with a biblical plague. It was an interesting time. I was busy, chronically busy, working 7 days a week, out 3, 4, sometimes 5 nights a week. And I was the only full-time staff member at our church at the time. So our church was growing. We grew something like 25% a year. We'd already run out of space at the place we were meeting, and I had to lead through a bunch of things I'd never done before, hiring new staff, finding a new location, leading a major renovation project. I had no idea what I was doing, lots of stress on that. But all of that was while I was supposed to be pastoring the church, so preaching, meeting with new families, starting new programs, responding to pastoral crises I had no business dealing with. Like I said, I was working 7 days a week around the clock, out sometimes 4 or 5 nights at a time. And it felt like there was never a time when my phone wasn't buzzing, when a fire didn't need to be put out, when a crisis wasn't happening. I was always just on the edge, and that's when my body broke out in boils. And went to the doctor. The doctor said, "You have shingles." I don't know if you know what shingles are, but they really do look like a biblical plague. They feel like it too. It kind of feels like getting electrocuted while being burned. And so I had boils all wrapped around my midsection. This red boils break out all over my body. It literally looked like the hand of God came down and struck me. And then the doctor leans in and explains, so the only reason a man your age would get shingles is because you're too stressed. So that's when I knew, maybe something should change. So that's when I went from working 7 days a week to working 6 days a week, more or less. And I began to deal with my schedule, but I did not begin to deal with the underlying problem, because here's the deal. I didn't even realize there was an underlying problem. I thought this was a scheduling problem. And then a few years later, just 2 years later, I had my most successful year ever. My career was just awesome. This is amazing. God is opening all these doors. I won a national award, was asked to teach at a university. Our church grew by 30%. People were asking me to be a leadership consultant for other churches. Everything was up and to the right. All these people were giving their lives, and all this stuff was happening. But then at the end of my most successful year ever, I was tired. I was so desperately tired that I don't quite have words for it. It wasn't a physical tiredness. My soul was tired. So I did what is my first move in those cases: run away from everything. Yeah. So if you want to run away from everything, though, I have a great place for you to go. It's called Greece. So that's where we went. And we dropped our kids off at Grandma and Grandpa's, and we took off, and it was amazing. We Athens and Corinth, and then this little island called Hydra. So at the very top of Hydra sits this famous monastery, Elijah Monastery. It's a Greek Orthodox monastery that has all this history to it and beauty. It's at the very top of this mountain on this island. It's just fantastic. I really wanted to go visit. I had heard about it, read about this, thought, when we're there, let's go see it. But the only way to get to the monastery was to hike. You had to walk. And it was straight uphill for 3 hours. So I explained to Jenny, let's go see this monastery. And she was like, I've got a better idea. How about you go visit the monastery while I lay on this gorgeous beach? And then at the end of the day, we'll meet up for dinner, and you tell me about your little monastery. So that's what we did. I was like, great. She's happy, I'm happy. I start my hike, and I decided to do something on that hike that I'd never done before. It's pray out my life, my whole life. So I'd heard about this, so I thought, I'm going to try this, where you start out at the very earliest things you can remember, and you don't remember it, you pray it, you talk to God about it, and you do this step by step, and you go year by year, season by season, just whatever comes to mind, all the way through your life till you get to today. It's a famous practice. Christians have been doing this for thousands of years, most famously Augustine. His Confessions, that's what his Confessions is. Now here's the thing. When you don't just remember, when you actually pray it, when you talk to God about these memories, it does something. Like you get a perspective on it that you don't usually get. And when you do it all at once by yourself, it gives you a perspective on life that you just can't have when you're living in the middle of it. And so, what stood out to me as I was walking up this mountain, going through my life with God, was that as I got to those years where my life got busier and busier and more successful, my life was almost entirely devoid of joy. Like no satisfaction in it, no delight. And what surprised me, actually, as I prayed through those years of great success, was that I was overwhelmed with grief. I felt a deep, deep pain, shame, and regret in those years. My life was as successful as it could be, but when I stood before God, I felt like I had nothing to celebrate. I was miserable. My work as a pastor, had become cursed and unholy, even as I was blessing people and teaching them about the holiness of God. And here's the craziest part. I get back from this huge realization, from this vacation, from this break, stepping away. I finally see what's happening in my heart, and I get home, and I went right back to it. I come home, and I changed nothing. And it's not until a year later, after living this outwardly successful, inwardly miserable life, that the bottom dropped out. And only after my life collapsed on itself and I'm sitting across from a therapist, only then do I start to see how trapped, how powerless, how addicted, how stuck I am. Only then do I start to see that it's not just a scheduling problem, it's me. I'm the problem. I am enslaved to something dark. So, this is my story. But after 15 years as your pastor, I know too well that unfortunately it's not just my story. Most of you have been there, and some of you are there right now. So for the next 3 weeks, we are going to pause our study of chapter by chapter through the book of Exodus, and we're going to talk about a theme. We're going to step back from all the details in this epic story to pick up a theme that you see that emerges through the book of Exodus, and it's this. God is inviting his people to Sabbath. That's the word, Sabbath, to a Sabbath rest. Sabbath is a Hebrew word, really simple. It just means to rest or cease. It is this deep, rich invitation to lay down your burdens. You don't have to carry it anymore. Let go of your anxiety and just delight. That life is a gift, that God wants to be with you. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to earn his love or acceptance. You don't have to earn this life. He wants to give it to you. He wants you to enjoy it with him. That's what Sabbath is. Now, it is such a simple, beautiful invitation. You might be wondering, like, what's so hard about that? Why? Nothing should be easier than this thing called Sabbath until you actually try it. Until you actually try to enter into it. In my experience, Sabbath is as pleasant to most of us as detox is to an addict. So that's what I want to explore today. What is that? Nothing should be better or easier than embracing Sabbath. Like, we're created for it. Literally, God creates 6 days, he creates, and then the seventh day he rested. When did he create man and woman? The sixth day. Their first full day. What does he call them to do? They've done nothing. What does he call them to do? Come, enjoy this, be with me. I've done nothing. I don't care. Be with me. Enjoy this. Like, we are created for this. This is built into creation itself, and yet for some reason this practice of Sabbath is so hard. So this is the question I want to ask today. Why is it so hard to rest? What is it in us and in our world that it feels so violently opposed to it? So in our study of Exodus, we've seen that Exodus is not just a story about the ancient Israelites, but it's the story that explains, it's the story of salvation. It's the story that helps make sense of our stories. And when we step back and look at this story of salvation, we find that Sabbath is not just one of the many Jewish laws or Jewish practices, but it's quite central. So literarily, if you take the book of Exodus and look at literarily the themes across it, you're going to find Sabbath is quite central to the overarching theme of the book. And literally, you're going to find that in the Ten Commandments, Sabbath is the center of the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments are about loving God and loving other people. And what sits in the very middle of loving God and loving other people? Sabbath. Sabbath rest is what holds together our love for God and love for other people. It's interesting. So for the next 3 weeks, this is what we're going to do. We're going to explore this theme that emerges from the book of Exodus. And today, I just want to start with this question. Why is it so hard to rest? In order to get this picture, though, we need to get kind of a bigger, broader view of the book of Exodus. So today, we're going to do a little bit of review. If you've been following along in the series of Exodus, this will be some review. But then we're going to speed forward to at least halfway through the book so that we can start to put these pieces together. Good? So here's where I want to start. Let's just a bit of review here. Exodus chapter 1, God's people are down in Egypt. Life is okay. They're living in the land of Goshen. But then there arose a new king who knew not Joseph, which means he didn't know the Israelites, and he has no relationship with them and starts to fear them. And then we read in Exodus chapter 1, verse 11, so they put slave masters over them to oppress them with forced labor, and they built Pithom and Ramses as store cities for Pharaoh. So this was an example we've used before of a store city. This is the Ramesseum. And we see all these structures around that temple in the middle. There's 80-some structures. This is a storage city that was built that's for Ramses. But for the Pharaoh of Exodus, same idea. Here we find Pharaoh, the wealthiest man in the world, is enslaving people. Why? To build storage cities to store up more stuff. He is not content with what he has. He's not content with enough grain for today. He's not content with enough grain for 10 years. He's not content with being the wealthiest man in the world. He needs enough grain for eternity. That's what that is. That's what a storage city is. So that for eternity to come, he will have enough. In Pharaoh's world, you can never have enough. The answer is always just a little more. Just a little more. What do you need? Just a little more. Verse 12. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied and spread. So the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites and worked them ruthlessly. They made their lives bitter with harsh labor and brick and mortar, with all kinds of work in the fields. And all their harsh labor, the Egyptians worked them ruthlessly. And this story just drags on, but you get the picture just from these verses that in Pharaoh's world, there can be no rest. Why? Because it's a pyramid shape. Pharaoh's at the top, and then he's got his Egyptian leaders and rulers and slave laborers, and then down at the very bottom are the Hebrews. And here's the thing. His desire never stops, never stops. He will only have enough when he has enough for eternity. He will only have enough when he has everything. So if he can never have enough, that means you can never stop, or it would threaten his greatness. In Pharaoh's world, work, which is good in Genesis 1, God himself does work. In Pharaoh's world, it becomes cursed and unholy. In Pharaoh's world, the Israelites are only worth what they can do for him. They become animate tools, what's called chattel, for making him wealthier. That's it. So this is the world that the Israelites are living in. This is the world that you and I live in. In the next chapter, he makes all of this clear. Pharaoh makes all of this clear because how he completely devalues anyone that does not serve his purposes, because he takes the little baby boys, the Hebrews, and he throws them in the Nile like a piece of trash. But remember, one of those boys is saved. Moses, he's drawn out of the water, And Moses then grows up, we know the story, and then Yahweh shows up to him at a burning bush with the message, go, set my people free. So Moses, reluctantly, but eventually, goes back to Pharaoh and shows up to Pharaoh and says, the Lord says, let my people go. And Pharaoh replies, who is the Lord? I do not know the Lord. Now, he's going to get an education in who the Lord is. But right now, I just want you to see this. This is not a debate over like time off policies right here. This is a war. They're declaring war. It's the God of this world versus the God of the Hebrews, Yahweh. And in this, you can hear what Pharaoh is, what he's trying to do here, because he shouts at Moses in the midst of this. You are stopping them, which we saw last week. Literally translates, you are Sabbathing them. I see what you're trying to do. You are trying to give these people a Sabbath rest. You are trying to give them a rest that no amount of labor could give. You are trying to make them receive life as gift. You are trying to make them feel like they have worth apart from what they do for me. And he knows that if they experience that rest, he will no longer have power over their lives. So he can't let that happen. So then he rolls out his strategy of like, how can I keep them enslaved? It's the same strategy that he's been rolling out for 3,500 years. It's discredit the message. If you practice Sabbath, think of all the stuff you'll have to give up. You're going to fall behind. Think of all the projects you won't get done. Think of all the stuff you're going to miss out. The relationships it'll be terrible. You can't do that. He overloads them with busyness and stress. Here's the deal. It's just, if you just push through this busy season, then I'll give you a rest. Just push through. Just push through. I used to tell Jenny all the time, we just need to get over the hump. And what we found out is that there's always, as soon as you get over that, there's always another one. And at one point, Jenny was like, I quit. We're done with the humps. He labels Sabbath as lazy, as a waste of time, and they believe it. He isolates them. He makes real connection and belonging feel impossible because you don't have time to just be with people. You don't have time for that. And then he sets these impossible standards and then shames them for failing. I recently learned this thing. It's helpful for me, maybe not for you, but it's a psychological term called the Zeigarnik effect. The Zeigarnik effect. It's when, so psychologists have studied this. You can plot this out. There's actual scientific research on this. If you give someone more to do than they can possibly get done, and then in the middle of them tell them to stop. No, you can stop. Take the whole weekend off. But let them know that all these things are hanging undone over their head. It will torture them. They will be worse at everything. Their blood pressure will go up. Their stress levels go up. All this. It's if you have things hanging over your head that are left unfinished, it will make you feel stressed and less human. Huh. Yeah. You guys are all picturing all the things you have to get done right now, aren't you? Yeah, you're like, when's the service going to get over? Holy cow. I got stuff to do. So here's the thing. This is his tactics. This is always the same tactics, same voice has been speaking for 3,500 years, and it works. Devastatingly well. The people of God are completely demoralized. They curse Moses, beg God to leave him alone, and just want to give up. So why is it so hard to rest? The book of Exodus suggests that if you struggle with the idea of taking one full day off just to be with God and enjoy his good creation, enjoy and just know that you are loved, if you struggle with that, maybe it's because you're enslaved to the God of this world. Maybe that's why you feel like you can't stop. Maybe that's why our lives are so filled with this like low hum of constant anxiety. Maybe that's why we feel so alone. Maybe that's why we feel a need to numb, a compulsion for more of restlessness, a sense that we must always be doing, buying, experiencing, watching, performing something, that there's something that just won't let us rest. And the Bible, it has a word for this. It's not a pretty word. It calls it slavery, spiritual slavery. I don't know about you, but that's not the word I would have used. If you had asked me 13 years ago, how are you, Paul? I would have said, busy. So busy. It's a lot prettier word, right? It's actually kind of wears that as a badge of honor these days. My soul isn't enslaved. I'm not trying to prove my worth through anything. I'm not finding my security through numbing. I'm not consumed with comparing myself to others. I don't feel a compulsive need to value myself by being helpful. I'm just busy. Now, let me be clear. When we use the word busy here, I am not talking about having a full schedule, because by that standard, Jesus at times was busy. I'm talking about the state of your soul. I'm talking about an inner reality that won't let you stop. I'm talking about the almost pathological busyness that has become just normal in our suburban world. Normal, expected. In my personal experience, just studying my own heart and doing life with you, I have to say that I now have come to the conclusion that chronic busyness is a symptom of spiritual slavery. Chronic busyness is a symptom of spiritual slavery. For many of us, this is our issue. We can't stop doing because we feel like our whole life depends on it. Our worth depends on our security. I have found, though, in the last few years that that's not the only way this slavery works its way out. Particularly in younger generations, in like Gen Z, slavery can look like chronic busyness, but it can also look like being completely demoralized. It can look like entirely giving up, like, what did they say, quiet quitting? Doom scrolling? Like turning Sabbath into another way to numb yourself rather than be with God, turning it into self-care, making it about yourself instead of making it about being with God. Different symptoms, same disease. One is enslaved to doing, the other is enslaved to despair, but it is the same core lie, and it's this: your life is up to you. You cannot trust anyone, not even God, with your deepest desires. You can't trust anyone with your deepest desires. You have to take care of you. That's what the lie is. Now, the Israelites, they are completely trapped in this lie, and there's nothing they can do to free themselves from it. In fact, at this point, we're not even sure they're aware of this. I don't even think they realize that this is the issue. They think the issue is that they're physically being beaten by these slave people. These slave workers, slave drivers. So God is going to have to act on their behalf, and this is when he comes in and he strikes Egypt with 10 spectacular plagues. Now, in these plagues, I want you to appreciate, he's not just like ruining their economy. He's not just doing some type of miraculous display of his power. In this, he is very pointedly mocking Pharaoh's authority and killing their gods one by one. So, Hapi and Osiris were the gods of the Nile. What's he do? He turns the Nile to blood. Heket was this frog-headed god. So what's he do? He fills the land with frogs and makes them die. Ra was the god of the sun. What's he do? Shuts off that switch, darkens it. You get the idea. He's creating this socio-political, economic pandemonium. It's like shutting off the internet. Like, can you imagine? It's like suddenly all Amazon deliveries stop. No! No, dear Lord. Can you imagine? That's what this is like. It is utter chaos politically, socially, economically, but it's not just that. It's personal. It's who you're trusting for your life, who you think sustains you. And he says it explicitly at the 10th and final plague, chapter 12. He says this: on that same night I will pass through Egypt and strike down every firstborn people of both people and animals. And, listen, I will bring judgment on all the gods of Egypt. I am Yahweh. This is personal. You are trusting in false gods. You're finding your hope in false gods. You're looking for your life, and you're looking for your security in false gods. So I'm going to kill them. I'm going to kill them all. He is not proposing like some paid time off policy. He's waging war. And here's the craziest part, though. Here's the craziest part. After he does it all, he's killed all the gods. He splits the sea. They walk through on dry land. He crushes it back on Pharaoh, kills Pharaoh. The God of this world is dead. He's gone. He has no authority over you. Pharaoh's dead. But Egypt is still alive in them. They still live like slaves. God has taken the Israelites out of Egypt, but now he has to take Egypt out of the Israelites. So God is going to take them on a bit of a journey. You're not ready to go into the promised land yet. We need a little detour. So jump ahead now. Exodus chapter 16. If you want to follow along in the Bible, we'll be in there the rest of the morning. Exodus chapter 16, starting in verse 1, says this. The whole Israelite community set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they had come out of Egypt. So, the reason why I want to point this out, that highlighted thing, the 15th day of the second month, they left Egypt on the 15th day of the first month. Now it's the 15th day of the second month. They've been traveling for a month. They're free from slavery for an entire month. And God has yet to provide them any fresh food. Verse 2. In the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, "If only we died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death. Why did you do this to me, Lord? Life was better under slavery." So, it sounds dramatic, and it is. But I do want you to get a sense of what we're talking about here. This is where God led them. The desert. This is what salvation looks like. Thanks be to God. He takes them to a place where they cannot meet their needs. They cannot survive on their own. There's nothing they can do to provide for themselves. Even if you built a storage city out there, there's nothing to store. If he doesn't show up, they're going to die. This is what you call a teachable moment. Yeah. Get what God's getting ready to do here. These people have only known life in Pharaoh's world. In Pharaoh's world, the way to have a secure life was more. So building storage cities is the way that you secure the best life, your happiness, your security, your hope. Your life was more. In fact, what does the wealthiest man in the world need? Storage cities so that he could store even more for himself. Now, I want you to, before we go casting stones at Pharaoh, I look at your own stuff. You know, in my neighborhood, we have nice big houses with big old garages. We're one of the only families in our neighborhood that can actually park in our garage because everyone else has so much stuff that they can't fit it in. They can't fit it all in their house. This is the world we live in. It's laughable. And Pharaoh in particular is laughable. And it's supposed to be. So Jesus makes this connection for us. Luke chapter 12, he tells the story about this man who is super ultra wealthy and had this bumper crop come in that year. And he's like, holy cow, what am I going to do? I now have more than I can possibly fit in my barns. I know what I'll do. I will tear down my barn and I will build bigger barns. Then I will enjoy my life forever. Then my life will be something. Then I'll have security. Then my life will be meaningful and happy if I just had a little more. And God says to him, you fool. Tonight, your life is going to be demanded from you. Who's going to enjoy it then? You see, Pharaoh is the original fool. He is endlessly building storage cities, thinking, I'm going to find security and happiness. But instead, he drowns an anxious, lonely, insecure, unhappy man who spent his whole life accumulating things that he would never get to enjoy. Huh? So God needs to free them from this mindset, this scarcity mindset that you will only be happy if you have enough experiences, if you do enough, if you have enough, if you own enough, if enough people like you, all these things that we do to try and create our own sense of self. He says, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send you a little test, not to see if you'll fail, but to see if you will learn to trust me. Look at the test, verse 4. Then the Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day, and in this way I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. Here's the test. Will you trust me with your daily bread? In Pharaoh's world, it was never enough. Like you could have more than you could possibly eat and you still wanted more, or you could be starving to death and you still wanted more. No matter where you were at on that spectrum, you wanted more. But he said, can you trust me with what you have? Can you learn to be content? I highlighted that phrase, enough for that day, because it literally translates the thing for a day in its day. It's the exact Hebrew phrase that Pharaoh used to describe what he expected from them every day. This is what you must give me. And God uses that exact same phrase, rips it out of Pharaoh's mouth, and says, this is what I give you every day. And this is what I'll do. I will rain down bread from heaven for you. Like you don't have to earn it. You don't have to deserve it. You don't have to produce it. Now, notice the thing about rain. You can't cause it. You can't work hard enough to get it. You can't hustle for it. You can't be worthy of the rain. It doesn't care about your resume, your work ethic, how badly you want it. It just falls on the righteous and the unrighteous, Jesus says. So all you can do is open up your hands and receive it. Now listen to Moses' word choice as he explains this here, what's about to happen. He says, verse 6, so Moses and Aaron said to the Israelites, in the evening you will know that it was the Lord who brought you out of Egypt, and in the morning you will see the glory of the Lord. Listen to that phrase, the glory of the Lord. This is what Moses sees when he's up on the mountainside and God has to cover him up, and then he comes down and he's got like his face shooting out beams of light because he's seen the glory of the Lord. This is what the Apostle Paul talks about in 2 Corinthians chapter 3 when he says, when we behold the glory of the Lord, we are being transformed. It will utterly change you. If you were to behold the glory of the Lord, it will transform you. That's what we should be beholding each day. So, how are they going to see the glory of the Lord? And the answer is bread. They will see the glory of the Lord in bread. In meeting their most basic, most ordinary needs day after day. Now we expect to see the glory of the Lord like in the spectacular plagues. That makes sense. Mountaintop experiences, that makes it. Revival, something great, we expect to see the glory of the Lord in that. But here God says, oh, no, you're paying attention to the wrong thing. You will see the glory of the Lord in the way that I provide for you your daily bread. Verse 13, in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. And when the dew was gone, thin flakes like frost on the ground appeared on the desert floor. When one of the Israelites saw it, they said to each other, what is it? For they did not know what it was. Moses said to him, it is the bread the Lord has given you to eat. And then we finally get it named at the very end of the chapter in verse 31. The people called the bread manna. So this is a Hebrew play on words. What is it in Hebrew literally is manhu. And then manna is what's it? Manna. What is it? What's it? What has God given us? What's it? I want you to pay attention to this because this is really, this shows something here. God provides for them in such an unexpected way that they don't even have a category for it. Like, what is it? I have no idea. I can't even give that thing a name. This doesn't fit into my framework. I thought that I would only get bread if I worked really hard, if I deserved it. I thought my life was only sustained by what I did. God says, no, I'm going to rain down a gift. Oh, what's it? You won't even have a category for it. You can only receive it. Now God, he does give us one sentence to explain what manna is. It's in verse 31. He says, it was white like coriander seed and tasted like wafers made with honey, which I always think sounds really nice, like something you'd serve at like a bridal shower maybe. A little raspberry sauce on top or truffles, you know. I'm not sure. I believe it's gluten-free. We don't know. But so God, that's all God gives us about what it is. But then he gives us, get this, 20 verses on how you're going to collect it. Because this is how I'm going to train you. This is how you're going to see the glory of the Lord. So I'm not going to go through all 20 verses, but let me just show you the highlights. If you go back to verse 16, we read, take as much as you need, as much as you need. But then he immediately explains this. He says, some gathered much, some little. The ones who gathered much did not have too much, and the ones who gathered little did not have too little. Do you hear this? He's utterly undermining Pharaoh's kingdom. In Pharaoh's kingdom, it was never enough. It's a world where they always wanted more. Like, even if you had more than you could use in a lifetime, you wanted more. And if you didn't have enough, you wanted more. You always wanted more. And here, in God's kingdom, it's enough. It's enough. Everyone has enough. Not more than enough. Not as much as you want. But enough is enough. And then verse 19, he says, now, don't try to store it up. But then, you know how this goes. As soon as you tell people not to do something, so he says, don't store it overnight. Then we read in verse 20, however, some of them paid no attention to Moses. They kept part of it until the morning, but it was full of maggots and began to smell. So, have you ever been at like one of those state parks in like August and it's like 100 degrees and you open up the trash can to throw something away and you see like a sandwich at the bottom and it's, why is that moving? You look and like it's writhing with maggots. Take that in, yeah? That is what God wants you to experience right now. This is the image. He's giving us a nice little visual lesson here. When you hoard what God is freely giving you, hear this. When you hoard and grasp what God is freely giving you, it doesn't just disappear. It doesn't just make it inedible. It becomes full of maggots. This is the picture that he wants to etch into our brains. That when we try to find our life, our sustenance, our meaning apart from him, it's not just like, it's not great. No, it's revolting. So the promotion that you thought would finally make you somebody steals your sleep and keeps you up all night. The relationship that you were sure would complete you complete me, becomes controlling and toxic. The money that you stockpiled to feel secure doesn't make you feel secure anymore, does it? The expectation you put on your kids only ruins your relationship with them. You have the most successful year of your life, but when you pray it out, you're filled with grief. This is stored up manna. And it's full of maggots. So I want you to get this visceral lesson here. He's teaching us, let's see if you've heard this one. He's teaching us, man does not live on bread alone. I know you think that if you had enough bread, you'd be happy, that you'd be sustained, that would be your life. You're wrong. Man does not live on bread alone. Like if you want to find inner freedom, if you want to break free from Pharaoh's world, you cannot find your life in bread and what you do and what you do not do. You have to rest in the fact that God will meet your needs. You have to trust God with your deepest desires. You have to trust God with your deepest desires. Otherwise, you will always be enslaved to anxiety, fear, violence, to Pharaoh. You will serve Pharaoh. In God's kingdom, we receive life as a gift. In God's kingdom, there is enough. And Moses then says, in order to fix this in our hearts and minds, in order to fix it into our lives, in order to fix it into our very bodies, here's what you need to know. One day is different. This is how you are going to truly learn this lesson. The last day of the week, you are to gather double and save it. Here's why. He said to them, tomorrow is to be a day of Sabbath rest. God is calling you to Sabbath, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. So bake what you want to bake, boil what you want to boil, save whatever is left, and keep it until morning. 6 days you are to gather, but on the seventh day, the Sabbath, there will not be any. So, my Bible friends in here who are afraid that Sabbath is just an ancient Jewish practice, tell me, what chapter are we in right now? What chapter? Someone? 16. We're in Exodus 16. Now, when does God give his 10 commandments and the law, the Old Testament covenant to his people? Does anyone know? Chapter 20. Chapter 20. It hasn't happened yet. Do you see this? Before God gives them the law, he gives them Sabbath. Before he asks anything of them, he invites them into Sabbath rest. Why? Because Sabbath predates the law. It's not just something in the law, it's built into creation itself. It's what it means to be fully human. If you want to learn how to be fully human, it means you practice Sabbath, a Sabbath rest, that you learn to walk with God in the cool of the evening. You learn that your life does not depend on bread alone or what you can do. You learn that life is gift, and you practice that. You live that. You don't just know it in your mind. Your body lives that. Your schedule lives that out. Your heart lives that out. Your relationships live that out. So, how does God give them inner freedom to match their physical freedom? Let's summarize quickly. He calls them to be content. Enough will be enough. He calls them to embrace their limits. Like 6 days, you shall work, you shall. But on the seventh day, there is a limit to that work. You have to shut it off, because if you're dependent only on you, it'll never be enough. The only way you're going to break free from that is when you set it down. There are limits to work. There are limits to wealth. There are limits to life. What you're really seeking is not more. What you're really seeking can only be received as a gift. And number 3, he calls them to rest in him. Don't wait until you've endlessly stored up. Don't try to numb yourself with activity. You can't overcome all of your problems. You cannot. You have to lay them down. And on the seventh day, we live into this. He calls them to put away all work, all distractions, and just be fully present with them and others. And then at the very end of this passage, in verse 32, something curious. He says, I want you to take some of that manna, and I want you to put it in that special box I have. Remember that box? It's called the Ark of the Covenant. I want you to save it for all time right next to where you're going to put Aaron's staff, and you're going to put the 10 Commandments, because this is how our relationship, this box that keeps the memories of the most sacred things to our relationship, to loving God and loving others, to how we are to live together, to what I did in Egypt, saving you out, all of that in that box. I want you to keep manna so that you will forever remember this lesson. This is how fundamental it is. Man does not live on bread alone. So I want you to see, if we back up and see what God is doing here, Sabbath doesn't just call us to remember the Exodus. In a small way, in like a symbolic way, God is inviting us to reenact the Exodus. That each week we get to participate in what Yahweh already did in defeating the gods of Egypt. We get to symbolically participate. We are invited to join in what God has already done in mocking and killing the gods of this world. So on Sabbath, the gods of consumerism and desire, this insatiable desire for more, we are declaring them, they're dead, they're defeated. The gods of achievement and creating your own value, they disappear. The gods of numbing and escapism, they have no place. The gods of anxious production, of distraction, of restlessness, they're put away, they're turned off. Sabbath then becomes this resistance, this active resistance against the God of the world. It's a call to break our addiction to what the God of this world is serving up. It's a declaration to the God of the world. You have no authority over me. I've already been set free. That's not who I am. I am no longer a slave. I am a child of God. And I'm going to live like it. I'm going to live in the promise, not of the lie, but the promise. Now, this isn't just a story about the ancient Israelites, is it? So in John chapter 6, Jesus picks up this very story, and he says something that's going to sound really familiar. He says, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry. I know you think you can fill that hunger in something else. I know you think you can satisfy it with what you're doing, with all your busyness, with all your activity, with all your entertainment, with all your more. You can't. If you're hungry, come to me. Trust me with your deepest desires. And then we see in his life on the cross, he declared, it is finished. The work is done. I have defeated the gods of this world. And in fact, Colossians chapter 2 says as much. It says he disarmed the powers and authorities, making a public spectacle over them. On the cross, it's a public spectacle. They're done. They're defeated. Just like the plagues of old were, but now in an ultimate way, they're done. They have no authority. And then on Saturday, the Sabbath, he rested in the tomb. And Sunday morning, he rose. A new creation, a new world, a new kingdom, declaring that sin and the grave no longer have claim on you. So, get the picture of what we're doing in Sabbath. In Sabbath, we are not just remembering the Exodus, and we're not just remembering the cross. When you take a day off, it's not just taking a day off. When you enter into Sabbath rest, you are proclaiming the gospel. You are proclaiming Jesus has done the work. It's finished. So I can rest. I don't have to do the work. I don't have to sustain my own life. I don't have to give myself meaning. He's already done it for me. And on the Sabbath, you are silencing the gods of this world, the voice that tells you, get back to work. You're lazy. That's what you are. Make yourself busy. Consume something. That anxious need to make yourself something, that fear of missing out, that insecurity that tells you you need more to be safe, the despair that tells you you have to take care of yourself. All of that on the Sabbath is silenced. Because Jesus looks at you and calls you a child of God and invites you to rest with him. And the God of this world, he drowns in his own anxiety, insecurity, and rage. This is Sabbath. So this is Sabbath, and this is the lesson that I've been struggling to learn for 13 years. I got to tell you, I'm not much better at it than I was 13 years ago. But the starting point, first admit your need. Hi, I'm Paul. I'm busy. A slave. But, yeah. Sometimes I still feel like I'm in the desert trying to store up a little extra manna for tomorrow. And every day I find it's just full of maggots when I do. Full of maggots. And so this is the message that I so desperately needed to hear 13 years ago and so desperately need to live today. And maybe you do too. Ultimately, it's just a very, very simple proclamation. You're no longer a slave. Pharaoh's dead. He's been defeated. You don't have to work for him anymore. You are loved. You're no longer a slave. You're a child of God. Now, does this raise all kinds of questions about how we actually practice Sabbath as Christians? Yes, it does. That's why we have 2 more weeks in this series, huh? But for today, to the extent that you're able, I just want you to let it rest and receive the invitation. The gods are dead. Pharaoh is drowned. And you are free. And Jesus says to you and to me, come to me, and I will give you rest. Rest that you will never find on your own.